All right, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everyone is doing okay. Folks, I'm here to bring you a very important video. I feel compelled to address some of the recent FUD we've heard about Pulse Chain from a well-respected channel, research group in the cryptocurrency community. Folks, the token metrics people who are highly regarded, highly respected for good reason, they're very knowledgeable people in the crypto space, are starting to spread some FUD about Pulse Chain, and I really feel this needs to be addressed, folks, because I think Pulse Chain, while of course there are some risks, just like there's risks in any investment, is likely to be one of the single best investments in all of cryptocurrency for the next several years. So being right or wrong on Hex and Pulse Chain is massive. The consequences of being right or wrong are massive. And so when people with little knowledge but extreme confidence spread FUD about either Hex or Pulse Chain, it's really sad because it negatively impacts people such as myself. Folks, I remember first hearing about Hex, I think it was well over a year ago at this point. It was a Token Metrics live stream where the guys at Token Metrics, Ian Bellina, interviewed Richard Hart. And I remember them. They were skeptical. They were spreading FUD. They said to think of Hex as a trade, not as an investment. And that was one of the worst pieces of non-financial advice they've ever given out, because Hex went on to do hundreds of X, thousands of X price growth since then. I'm not sure exactly how much. I haven't measured it. I don't want to, because I don't want to. I don't want to cry myself to sleep. But point being, folks, like, you gotta understand the FUD and the skepticism in the context of how extremely well Hex has performed. I mean, from the all-time low to all-time high, nearly a million % price growth in just under 2 years. And sure, we're dumping right now, but look at the macro picture, folks. Like, there's real consequences to spreading FUD about this stuff. So without further ado, why don't we hear exactly what the most recent comments were about Pulse Chain and address each point and go into what I have a bit of an issue with and where we could find some common ground. So why don't we hear them out and then comment further.
Next question is, what are your thoughts on the biggest airdrop in history? Richard Hart is forking Ethereum full system state, meaning everyone will receive a copy of their ERC20 tokens on the new network. I'm honestly not the biggest fan of that. I haven't done a ton of deep research into this project, but so what if they fork, Audius, right? And you get your Audius tokens on the Pulse chain, right? It's going to be called Pulse chain. If Audius doesn't decide to do anything with those tokens or continue development on that chain, then it really doesn't do anything for Pulse chain. So I'm just going to stick to Ethereum and not get caught up in hype around a project that's probably not going to see long-term success, at least in terms of people wanting to develop on it. Now, if I see developers go on Pulse chain and a lot of good quality projects and VC money back projects that are being built on Pulse chain, which we're not seeing yet, but if we start to see that, okay, then maybe we'll talk about Pulse chain. But in the state that it's in right now, I'm personally staying away.
All right, guys, so before I go on to express my criticisms of what we just heard from the Token Metrics guys, I first want to say that, look, I think these guys are highly knowledgeable. I think they mean well. I think they're trying to look out for their community, look out for their members. Part of their job as technical analysts and working at a crypto research company is to think about risk and to express risk, because risk is a very real thing. As we've recently seen with Hex, risk is very real. We can see substantial long pullbacks. So folks, risk is very real. So I have no problem with expressing the risk. In fact, it's a great thing to express the risk. It's a great thing to understand the risk. But I do have some problems with what we just heard there from Forrest, because Forrest is a smart guy. He knows very well how early this thing is. And so I want to address a couple of the points he brought up. So number one of the first things he said was, I haven't done much research. I don't know much, but then I'm going to go on to have some really strong opinions about Pulse Chain. I mean, folks, look, a lot of what we heard is a little bit comical in my opinion, because a lot of his criticisms can just as easily be applied to tons of other projects that he's more bullish on or speaks of more favorably. So why this negative angle on Hex, and I think he probably doesn't like Richard Hart, and that's well and good. But folks, one of his criticisms were I've written down here. So why would it matter if they fork something like Audius? If the Audius team decides to not support the fork on Pulse Chain, then what good are those tokens? And that's actually a good point. I agree with you there. But he went on to say, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is, folks, if anyone's tried to use the Ethereum network right now, it costs anywhere from $50, $100, sometimes even more, simply to swap a token. If you're trying to buy Audius, it could cost you $50, $100 simply to buy Audius. And on Pulse Chain, it's presumably going to cost pennies. That is a huge deal. That is a massive value proposition, and this guy is a smart guy. He knows this stuff. So again, I think the metaphorical memo went out at the Tokenmetrics team that, hey, we don't like Hex, we don't like Richard Hart, and so we're gonna have this negative angle towards Richard Hart projects. But I really think, and my main criticism boils down to not that there's risk, but I think that Pulse Chain deserves more open-mindedness, and that's ultimately my major criticism here. That I think given the context of how well Hex has performed, that Pulse Chain deserves more open-mindedness, and that's truly where my criticisms boil down to. He's also gone on to say that we're probably not going to see long-term success with Pulse Chain because nobody's building on it. Well, Forrest knows very well that nobody's building on it because Pulse Chain does not exist yet. It is not out yet. And folks, these guys talk massively favorably about Cardano, and they did for months. Cardano had nothing built on it. Cardano had no dApps built on it. Smart contracts just came out a month ago. These guys talk all the time about projects that are new in a favorable light, that have massive potential risk, and they're very unproven. So why the double standard with Pulse Chain? Of course there's some risk, but I think we're seeing a bit of a double standard from the Tokenmetrics guys when it comes to Richard Hart and Hex and Pulse Chain, because I think they don't like Hex. I think they don't like Richard Hart. And again, there are risk factors with Hex, and we can delve into that. But ultimately, my major criticism boils down to, given the context and the history of how well Hex performed and how people missed out due to the Tokenmetric advice, that I think that they should probably be a bit more open-mindedness, and I think their viewers deserve them to have a bit more of an open mind and not be so closed off, because the criticisms that Forrest just gave can just as easily be applied to many projects that they talk about in a positive light all the time. Pulse Chain is not out. Pulse Chain will have much cheaper fees than Ethereum. There's a massive value proposition here, and we're starting to see fear, uncertainty, and doubt come out from well-respected members of the crypto community. Again, I think these guys are smart. I think these guys mean well. I think they're trying to look out for the community, but I just think they called this wrong, and I think the metaphorical memo went out that, hey, we're not going to talk about Richard Hart projects positively, and I really think they should revisit this given the context of how wrong they were about Hex. And yeah, we're having a correction right now, but folks, look at this chart. Again, over the long term, this thing's probably going to stick around and probably do very well over the long term. Pulse Chain is probably going to do the same thing. Faster, cheaper Ethereum is a massive value proposition. Of course, no one's built on it yet because it's not out yet. So, folks, don't buy the FUD and don't buy the FOMO. Do your own research. My job is to simply present my thoughts, and hopefully you guys can take that into consideration and do with that what you will. Come to your own conclusions. But we're going to start to see a lot more FUD come out with Pulse Chain the closer we get to launch, and just come to your own conclusions, because the same people that are going to spread FUD about Pulse Chain were the same people that spread FUD about Hex, and look what happened over the last 2 years. Hex did nearly 1,000,000% price growth. So, folks, beware of the FUD. Do your own research, like and subscribe, and until next time, take care.